Howdy, howdy. We are looking at Zalen, What Kills Must Die. I am going to give this review in 3 different sections. Number 1, we're going to do a non-spoiler, non-opening the book review. I'm going to give you my thoughts, what I was expecting, as well as what I read. And number 2, we're going to look at some interiors and look at some specific stuff in the first act. And then number 3, we're going to go full on spoilers, not enough to where you can actually feel like you read the book. But we are going to look at the full book and look at some of what happened in the book, what I liked and didn't like. So first part here, we're going to talk about what is Zalen, what is the book. I know there's some issues with the printing, and I'll be honest, I did not notice, I'm going to always be honest with you, but I did not notice the binding issues. Now that said, I read for the writing. So, if there is really bad art, I will be very distracted from the story and not want to read it. But this one, the binding issues, did not give me any issues. In fact, I was enthralled by the art that Joe Bennett does. In fact, when I'm going to open this book, as you'll see, it made me realize, man, I need to get some better lighting. I have a O-ring you can see in the reflection, but it's at my desk where I do videos for work. So, I need to get some better lighting, but this is beautiful. So I got the cover B. I always get the homage covers, the old school Silver Age covers, because I didn't grow up in that era. I'm jealous of that era. And so I always get these because it's a little bit of, I love the other art. I definitely love the cover C's, but I get them to read. I collect some things on Comic Wise, specifically art germ covers like you saw in my mail day video a few days ago. But the Rippaverse stuff, I just get to read, and I guess I'll get statues to collect as well. So, to wrap up my review here of Zalen, What Kills Must Die, the writing is fantastic. The art is amazing. The binding issue is really just a non-issue unless you just want to find something wrong with it. My overall, and the other thing, so I grade things on 3 different levels. The writing, I'm not saying there can't be a lot of writing. I love good pulpy writing. I really love that style of writing. But what's important to me is that words aren't just said because they need to be said, or they want to be said, or, the voicing isn't right. I really appreciate when writers like Chuck Dixon in this video can say a lot with a little. And when it's backed up by art, like this book really will show, the combination of art that shows and writing that doesn't just tell, but conveys emotion and the motive and there's another word I'm trying to think of, but the writing that conveys everything that the character is going through and wanting to see. When you have those cooking on all cylinders, when you have those firing on all cylinders, it makes for a tremendous read. So Zalen, What Kills Must Die, the writing's fantastic, the art is fantastic, and the third thing that I always rate it on is how it makes me feel. I think you can have a fantastically written and drawn book, or illustrated, I should say, but it could lack emotion. It could lack something that makes you feel connection, it makes you feel understanding, it makes you feel empathy. I want to feel something when I read. If I want to learn something, I'll listen to a sermon or I'll watch an instruction. And too many comics these days are veiled preaching in a mode of entertainment. I think there can be edutainment, but for books like this, I want to be entertained. And if you can show me something and help me feel something from a separate perspective, or remind me of something growing up, or something that I long for, or if you inspire me, I think that is a great thing that really nails a great comic book, which is why Mark Millar is one of my favorite authors for comic books, because every book he writes, I feel something. And so Chuck Dixon does a really good job as well. I'm going to give Zalen, What Kills Must Die, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's not my favorite Rippaverse book. My favorite Rippaverse book is Alpha Core, also written by Chuck Dixon. And it's certainly not my least favorite. My least favorite is actually Isom 1. This is on the upper end of it. The writing is fantastic. The characters are on point. The art is beautiful. The only reason I give it a 9 and not a 10 is there is one piece of, there's a few pages in the middle that goes into Zalen's backstory. I thought it was a little convenient. It kind of took me out of it, like that's it. Like there's this conflict that comes up and then something happens to where they go to the flashback and then it just kind of ends. And maybe I've read it 3 times, maybe I just didn't understand it, but that one piece, those few pages kind of took me out. Maybe it'll make more sense in the context of more Zalen issues. But with that said, 9 out of 10, of course, it's one of the best Rippaverse books. So that is my non-spoiler review. Now we're going to look at discuss some of the first act and look at some of the first pages. So we're going to go into a little bit of spoilers, not enough to, I would hope that anything more than a trailer would give you in a movie. So we're going to do that now. So if you don't want to see the interiors or waiting for the book or you just don't care, thank you guys for watching, like and subscribe. I'm going to go next into the interior of the book. So you can see some of this beautiful, beautiful art. A little bit about Zalen. I think this book is the perfect first trade issue. I think what Chuck writes in here, Marvel and DC would take 18 to 30 issues to tell. And Chuck does it in about 6 issues. And so the fact that we get a really great introduction to who Zalen is and kind of what his motive is and a little bit of what he thinks, I think is fantastic. And I really think this is one of those pages that has a slight binding issue. You can see that in the middle. The left issue is a little bit duplicated. You can see that alien, I think, has too many legs. Again, when I'm reading it, I didn't really notice. The other thing too is, I am not a huge fan of trades. In fact, what I would love to see is Rippaverse to take a trade and offer it as 4 or 6 floppies. So you can get the trade or you can get 4 floppy formats, because splash pages like this just don't hit as well in trade. That's why I still love floppies. And I would gladly pay, this book was $25. I would gladly pay $40 or $50 if I can get this in 4 floppy form. Maybe you can include some bonus content, like some letters to the editor, or maybe some, I don't even mind having the ads. I was like one of the only persons that didn't mind the ad in issue 1 of ISOM. Anyways, so the art here, this really showcases, and before I drop my camera, there we go. The art really showcases how beautiful Joe Bennett does. And this one didn't go too heavy on the splash pages. Now, I don't normally read space sci-fi. It's just not totally my jam. I do like space sci-fi that's very, what's the word? Dystopian and almost like 3-body problem or silo. Like you have no idea what's going on, but something's happening. This is another, I think this is the only other issue where there's a binding issue. You can see his belt buckle is duplicated a little bit. Again, didn't notice it on my first reading, but this art is gorgeous. Man, I would love to have that on a poster, and it's really great. So when I called him Punisher Superman in space, you can see that this is the Superman part of it. Like he is basically Superman, super strength, super speed, super everything. He's like the perfect man, okay? And the reason I say Punisher is because obviously you can see here what kills must die. So he really goes after people that are doing harm to others. Now, the thing that I like, and I don't know if this is Chuck's intention or if maybe it was just subtext that I'm pulling out that I normally don't. The thing that makes Zalen different from the Punisher is the Punisher goes and kills where justice has not been implemented. So if someone is not tried, someone is not caught, someone's like gotten away, Punisher will go out and just straight up murder that person. And usually it has to do with people who kill other peoples. Now, directly, like you murdered someone, so now I'm gonna punish you, right? Zalen, at least in this issue, what kills must die, I love that his primary hunt, so to speak, the people that he's going after are not so much those straight up murderers, like let's just nuke someone, but they're actually the ones that steal resources. So we have here in the introduction, he's talking about the main components of life and how water is a main component of life. And so this alien race comes and steals the water. I guess they're like ionizing it or freezing it somehow and stealing all the water. So they're not directly killing this alien planet, the civilization there. They're stealing their water. They're stealing their resources. So eventually it will end in the death. And some might argue that's worse, because at least with murder, like you're ending their life there and there's no suffering. These people are going to suffer. And so that's almost worse. So then Zalen shows up and he's gonna start kicking some booty, okay? And then he returns the water to the planet, but of course, if you just dump imagine someone took all the oceans out of the earth and then dumped them back on the earth all at once, there's gonna be some ecological issues there. And, he has to answer to that. So beautiful art. And again, like this binding is great. This binding does not matter, but you can see here, like I would much rather lay this flat as a floppy. And I'm one of those guys that I pay attention to the spine I never want to crack the spine. In fact, I take pride in enjoying that. On my shelf, you can't really tell what books I've read. You can see a little bit of the spine there. You can really see it on the front though. You know, you're gonna have that bend here, right there. You can barely see it in the glare there. But I take very good care with my books. So, you know, because I don't want to just flat out crack the spine, you know, I never try to open it more than this. And by the way, special bonus tip here, if you're ever at a comic shop and you're looking at books, never open them like just kind of flip through them like this to look at the art, but never fully open them. I think that's something that you can do to really show care to the future buyers of that book. So, and then we meet the team, and I won't go too much further than this. I really like the team. I like, what's his name? Bong. Yeah, Bong or Bong. I was going to say Bonk, but I love Bong. He's my favorite team member here. He's kind of like a combination of Beast and the mechanic. He's got a little bit of a wise suit, not a wise guy soothsayer that I want to say, but you know, kind of the brains of the operation, kind of the brawn and mechanic of the operation. And then you get these little guys. This plays a little bit into the whole baby stuff that we have. And we've got Baby Yoda, and then in Star Wars, we had that baby droid. Can't remember its name in the last episode. So these guys, they get into some antics. They get into some background antics. They're kind of like the minions. But you know what? It's not a Baby Yoda. It's not a baby droid. It's like a minions. You find out, slight spoiler again, you find out that this is actually their ship, and Zalen rescued them from danger. So he kind of, they let him be a guest and use the ship. So, so the team dynamics here are really good. Now, the thing that separates this from Dirty Deeds, which I also really liked, but I read that before I started this channel. The thing is that Dirty Deeds is really a teamwork. I don't remember if there was a straight up leader of the team. Zalen is the straight up leader of the crew of this ship. So basically all those little minions worship him, or at least, you know, treat him like almost like a god, even though he's not a god. They straight up say it. And the team obviously has some team dynamics. You know, they have some friction in some places. They obviously care about Zalen and his mission. They care about his history, and you go into the history. And that's the only thing that I knock off a point on, which I feel kind of like imposter syndrome, because it's like, who am I? I'm just a guy who reads comics and not a reviewer. But they get into, I'll talk a little bit more about this page in the super spoiler section. But they get into his history, his background, and you see a little bit of where he came from. And, you know, he's got a Superman-esque story. I won't get into the details of that, but you see it in the context of a flashback. And that was really well done, the flashback itself, but the way it happened, the way it came about, and the way that it resolved just seemed a little bit more, and then. You know, we talk about in stories, right? You want to have, but then, or then this happened, until something. That part of the comic really turned into an and then. So there was a little bit of a but then, something happened, but then it just became and then, and then kind of the bow tied itself too neatly. So, you know, that one part took me out of it. Other than that, I was super into it. So, you know, like I said, Punisher, Superman in space. The Punisher, you know, he's really going after the people that are doing harm to other races, and he's doing it more in a way of not through justice wasn't done, so I'm gonna get revenge or vengeance, but really in a way of no one's standing up for the little guy, so I'm gonna make sure I stand up with them. And he's not there to avenge someone's death. He's there to avenge people that are wronged. And in some cases would have been better off just dying off or getting killed. So I really like that. And you know, I should have seen it. What kills must die. That could easily be a Punisher catchphrase. But yeah, and then Superman, obviously he's a very Superman-ish character. He is, I think, the most powerful force in the universe. Sorry, Ira. And so, you know, he's gonna have those powers. So if that looked good, if you like that art, you know, obviously, I don't imagine too many people are gonna be too concerned with this middle section here, because either you're gonna get the book by now or not. But if you're seeing this and you're still not sure, you saw the art, didn't go too much in the writing, because you know, the writing is what makes the comic, to me. I know some people say the art makes the comic, but to me, the writing makes the comic. Now, you know, pages like this, Chuck narrates in about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of dialogue. And there is a lot in here about, you know, how this is what kills dies, and now I have to bring order out of disorder. It is my place in the way of things. Like, this is how Zalen sees himself. He is almost like a judge. Now, and this is where we get into like, okay, this is man's power fantasy, and this is not how we want the world to work. We don't want one man. We know that. We're smarter than that, but we're escaping reality to see someone take order and justice into their hands the way that we wish we could, right? And this is not us saying that we want our own Zalen, okay? But he says so much in these 3 paragraphs. I feel some of the main 2 would fill this up with text and fill that up with text and have random off-screen dialogue. Chuck Dixon does so much with so little, and I really love that. So 9 out of 10, you see the art is great, the writing is great. I mentioned a little bit about, the one happenstance that I didn't really care for. So now I'm gonna get into heavy spoilers, heavy spoilers, what's his name, Paul. But I'm gonna get into heavy spoilers, look at some of the stuff towards the end, some of the things that I see, some of the questions that I have. So if that's not you, if you don't wanna get heavily spoiled, save this video, come back to it later, but thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. And here we go. Just kidding, had to take a sip. So Zalen here, I think, is fantastic. We're in the heavy spoilers. I love this introduction, showing that, he cares about these people. He's not avenging their death. He doesn't want them to die. He's gonna come in and try to save them. And I think that's great. I mean, the Punisher tries to save people too. We know that. But much of Punisher's story, I think, from what I get, is, righting the wrongs, but the wrongs have already been done. He's at least trying to mitigate the wrongs. And, I think that's something that he has to answer to, right? His shipmate is like, they're going to have ecological issues because they took all the water out of all at once, but you just put it back all at once. And so they're going to have flooding, they're going to have storms, the land's going to be offset. And Zalen's just like, I know, but it's better than dying from thirst. I think he's got a point. They go on the ship, and I love this dude in the middle. Soko, I think his name was, or Soloko. I love this idea. I think this is so cool. They have some kind of interdimensional whale. Maybe that's a little Star Wars-y. I never saw or read anything about those light speed, warp whales or something like that. But I like the idea that there's this giant whale in the middle, and he's the one that is doing the dimensional rifts to get the ship going everywhere. I really, really love that Chuck, I think, addresses, even though I don't quite understand where he's going, addresses the issue that when you're traveling faster than light and you're going through these light lanes or whatever, like in other sci-fi things, you've got time dilation. Like everywhere in the universe is not in the same time zone. If you blinked and you appeared on the other side of the universe or the other side of the galaxy, well, I don't know about the galaxy, but if you blinked and you went to the other side of the universe, that side of the universe might only be the year, if the universe is 6,000 years old, it might only be the year 2000, whereas it's the year 4000 here. And so you go back in time, or you go fold space and you go to the other side of the universe, and it's the older part of the universe, and it's actually the year 10,000. So, how do you deal with that? I think they're talking about how, which I don't understand, and that's fine. Soloko, I should figure out what his name is. I think it's on this page. I can't see it. Maybe it's later. But I'll call him Soko right now. He talks about how he's got to go into the void, and it seems like the void is almost like a light speed lane. I think what do they call it in Star Wars? Hyperspace lane. And so it's kind of like that. It seems like maybe they're going in space. Maybe like in Warhammer, you go into the void. Is it the void? Not the void. What is it called in Warhammer? Anyways, you go into the space in between space. And so you get a little bit about where he comes from, or at least what he remembers. But they're in the void, the warp. That's what it was in Warhammer. And so they get some communications. And so there's some timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff. I wish we could understand it. And then something happens. The calculation was off, or there was a flux, and they're ripped out of the void. I didn't quite understand what this was either. And again, I take responsibility for that. I'm not sure what I'm missing, but they come out of the void. They're going faster than light. And so he's saying that if they don't slow down, once they come into real space, they're gonna get flattened like a pancake, which I get, right? I remember in physics learning that if you throw a baseball at 0.99 light speed, the friction on the ball would cause a nuclear blast and New York would be flattened. So I imagine something like that. Coming out at the speed they are into real space, they would get flattened. So I totally get that. So he saves it, and here's my one kind of questionable choice here, which is we have these giant stingray monstrosities, like literally moon-sized stingrays. I like that idea. I thought that was cool. That's crazy. And he even dresses, because the whole point of the Zalen, or at least this issue, is everything requires certain things to be living. Carbon-based life forms need hydrogen, or excuse me, oxygen. They obviously need carbon to form. And he even takes the moment to address, like, they're obviously surviving in a gas cloud off of pockets of hydrogen and carbon. So I thought that was fun. But we find out that those are actually the babies, and Mama shows up. And this is a weird thing. This was a little just too weird or coincidental to me. So Mama Bear shows up and gets her tentacles on Zalen. And of course, Zalen, being the superhero, is like, you guys get out of here. I'll save you, or I'll distract them. And then it turns out that the tentacles are some kind of psychic connection. And this is where we get some of his backstory. This is a great example, by the way, of show, don't tell, showing the backstory. And so we can see that Zalen was raised on his own. No one was on the planet. He was raised by machines. He was bathed in ion, or took a bunch of ion baths, and that's where his superpowers came from. And I don't know whose idea this was, or if this was intentional. I get Action Comics 1 vibes from this, the cover of Action Comics with Superman. I love that. I love that. It's just snuck in there. It could have been a whole cover, but to sneak it into one panel, I thought that was cool. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't see how that couldn't be intentional. And so we get his backstory here. You know, we don't know why he was made or why he was raised the way he did. But you know, it is what it is. And then the giant mama space stingray says, "Go, we trouble you no more," and then just leaves him alone. Like, what? Like, there could have been a hint. Maybe she knew. The mama space stingray, like, knew who he was, or understood his purpose, or maybe it feeds off of good vibes and he didn't have any good vibes. I don't know. That just seems too weird, that she was like, oh, I learned your history and now I'm going to leave you alone. Like, I don't know. I didn't care for that. So then he gets back to the ship, and we get a conversation between him and, let's see, I think we finally get his name here. Solos. Okay, Solos. What was I saying before? Soko or something? Solos. So we finally get a conversation between him and Solos. And I love this. I love the idea of Solos being this living being that can create voids. You know, and the thing is I don't even know if Zalen knows everything about him. Because remember, this is the Minions ship. So where did the Minions get this guy? Or is this guy maybe enslaved? And the Minions bought a ship and he just comes with the ship? I don't know, but I like that. And then they make his deal like, okay, we're gonna go to my home planet, because for some reason Zalen thinks that the giant space mama stingray told him to go back, like maybe he'll get some answers there. So, okay, sure. Again, that whole second part just is off for me. Maybe you can explain it to me in the comments. And then we go into more team stuff, which I enjoy. And then they get back to their planet, and you know, the planet's being destroyed. And turns out there's these machine aliens that are harvesting the resources from the planet. So again, we get more, you know, these people are taking resources. And so whatever was on the planet has been killed. And this one becomes a little bit more of a personal vendetta, because we already know that there was no one on the planet. But what they did was they really just wiped out everything else. So any answers that Zalen could have gotten had been wiped out. So we get that battle here, and I really enjoy what Zalen does to defeat them, which is pretty cool. I won't go too far into that because this is like a really cool battle. We see something that teases maybe something he'll learn in the future. And then what's funny is, I wanted to point out, we get more Minions shenanigans, which I really enjoy. So the Minions are over here. They're building a beach sandcastle. This is after the main battle. This is kind of like, I guess, the epilogue. And they find a crab, and then the crab comes out, and the crab's chasing them. You know, this is in the background, kind of. Then you get Solos. He gets his whatever planet they're on. They get time to let him spread his wings, so to speak. And then the end. The end I didn't get until my second reading. They get that transmission. There's been a transmission been trying to reach them. And it turns out there's an escaped convict, and they ask, what does he look like? And they'd like start barfing. And they say, okay, well, where is he? And it turns out the escaped convict is They don't say anything specifically. That's why I missed it the first time. He's in the third planet of the G2V type star. And they're like, that's a backwater sector. And I'm guessing this is Earth, right? So something has escaped prison and is coming to Earth. And, he says, Solos, we're going to go to this planet. And Solos is like, it's a long way away. It's very far. And they're like, all right, let's go. Now, I didn't really understand these last two panels. He says, what makes this rock so special? What do they call it? And Bong says, Darity, Jord, and then tell us. And then Zalen says, that's a stupid place. And then Bong says, let's keep an open mind. So they never flat out say Earth. They don't say, what is the other, Terra? Is that what other sci-fi places call it? Like Terran? He says, tell us. But I think it's going to be Earth. And so next issue, we'll see Zalen come to Earth and he'll become more of that Superman character. An alien with superpowers, indestructible, undefeatable, super strength, can fly, coming to Earth. And I have a feeling, I don't know, maybe bonk, 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 might get into a fight with Yaira. Maybe he'll get in a fight with Alpha Core. I don't know. Maybe he'll see some kind of wrongdoing. Maybe we'll get some time where, something's really going to develop power and take down the heroes, and maybe Zalen will show up. I don't know. But you guys, you saw the art is just tremendous. The words that Chuck Dixon uses to communicate everything that's going on with Zalen is fantastic. Binding issues aside, I didn't even catch it the first time. Am I going to send this in? No, because if you send it in, my understanding is you get cover D. So they're not reprinting cover A, B, or C. They're only reprinting D. So you can send this in, get the refund, or send it in and get cover D to replace it. But I'd rather have the cover. Again, the binding issue didn't mean anything. Now, if it had, and I think Eric would do this. I think if pages were missing, if pages were in the wrong order, I think he would do a full reprint and all that stuff. But since it really is an aesthetic thing, there aren't words missing. Since it's an aesthetic thing, that doesn't really impact the story. And in fact, if you were to lay this and it covered a football field, the error binding pages would probably cover 3 inches. Not a big deal. So again, I don't really blame, it's more work than it needs to be. And if you feel like he should do a full refund and full reprint, hey, that's your feeling. But I can say like, hey, I would prefer that too. But the fact that he's not, it stinks, but I'm happy to keep this. It wasn't a huge, big issue. I'd be very upset actually if there were pages missing and he's like, no, you got to buy a new book or trade it in and you're only going to get cover D. And it's like, well, no, I paid for all the pages. I also paid for them to be binded correctly, but you can't be perfect all the time. And I know that as a business owner as myself. So 9 out of 10, if I had to go to points, I'd say 93 out of 100, almost a 9.5. Maybe 95 if it would have been binded correctly, but 93 out of 100, 9.3. Punisher, Superman in space. If you had told me that, I'd be like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. But now that I read it, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I got this. I'm glad I got this. And I also like seeing, like, once you read the book and then you read the captions on the front, Defender of the Cosmos, like he's defending people who can't defend themselves. Born Beyond the Stars, yeah, we don't really know where he's coming from. The most powerful force in the universe, yeah, he's basically Superman. And then Galactic Protectors, Tala, Bong, and Mighty Zalen. So Tala, I believe, is that tall Avatar chick. And then Bong, of course, is the beast mechanic that I really enjoy. Shout out to the Minions. I know they have a name, but they're the Minions to me. So 9.3 out of 10. What did you think? Did you read Zalen? Thank you guys for watching. I was going to do this in a few videos, but I thought let's go ahead and knock it out all at once. So thank you guys for watching, especially if you stayed to the end. What was your favorite part? Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube stuff, and I'll see you all in the next video. Adios.